In an age where honor and loyalty determine a man's worth, Haldor, a warrior of unquestionable courage, found himself at the mercy of a treacherous fate, not by his own hand, but by the intrigues that spread in the shadows of his own clan. Unjustly accused of betraying the Jarl, Haldor was sentenced to death, a sentence he never imagined would come, not even remotely, from his own brothers in arms. The Jarl's sword found his neck, but the warrior's blood did not run on the icy stones of Scandinavia. He survived, but at what cost? Left for dead in a forest where death is a silent certainty, he was to be consumed by the cold and the wild beasts. However, what none of his pursuers knew, not even the Jarl who sealed his fate, was that Haldor possessed something that would transform him: the will to seek revenge. Now, hunted and tormented by his own past, Haldor is no longer the man who once knew his honor. He is a specter, a shadow that wanders the frozen forest, a man between life and death, consumed by the desire to prove his innocence and, above all, to take revenge on those who betrayed him. But wolves are not his only threats. The relentless cold of Scandinavia is an unforgiving enemy, and his former companions, turned hunters, are on his trail, guided by a blood oath and the promise of revenge. For Haldor, all that remains is a path of the damned, one that few would dare to tread, where every step is a fight for survival. But there is no turning back. The death that was promised to him will have to wait. The frozen forest of Scandinavia, with its tall, dark trees, becomes an unforgiving setting where Haldor is forced to reinvent himself. The wild nature seems to have swallowed everything around him, but he does not give in, does not surrender to the death that awaits him at every corner. The cutting wind drags his thoughts as he walks miles without a clear direction, searching for food, shelter, and, above all, answers. His weakened body, covered in scars from past battles and marks from the cruel steel of the Jarl's sword, still finds the strength to resist. Survival is not just a matter of physical strength. It is his mind, sharper than ever, that guides Haldor through the darkness of the Viking winter. Each step he takes is a closer to his purpose: to prove his innocence and at the same time discover the truth behind the betrayal that was imputed to him. But the relentless Scandinavian winter has its own language. The sound of snow crunching beneath his feet echoes for miles, and with each passing moment, the wolves draw closer. Haldor, skilled as a hunter, is not only an easy target, but also a predator. He knows that in order to survive, he will need to use all his senses, his agility, and the cunning he never needed before when glory and honor were his constant companions. But the problem is not just the wolves. As he advances, he encounters memories of his own choices that haunt him like ghosts. Was the betrayal truly a lie, or had he failed in his loyalty to the Jarl? Every step Haldor takes is an internal battle between what he was and what he needs to be in order to continue on his journey of survival. As day gives way to night, darkness becomes Haldor's only friend. He hides in caves and adapts to his environment, masterfully using the resources around him. But in every corner of the frozen forest, loneliness seems to swallow his soul. Each weak fire he lights to warm his body also ignites the memories of his former glories, which, like a flame threatening to go out, are constantly fueled by the need for revenge. Haldor is no longer just a warrior, but a broken man, fighting against his own past and against the predators that are ever closer to his prey. His journey of survival gradually becomes a quest for redemption, where the line between honor and revenge blurs in the icy cold of the Scandinavian night. The echoes of familiar footsteps reverberate in Haldor's mind, like a distant warning that he is no longer alone in the frozen forests. The same men who fought by his side, who called his name in times of triumph, have now become the hunters in his relentless pursuit. Each of them, marked by the pain of a betrayal they believed to have been committed, has spared no effort to follow his trail. They are warriors, former battle companions, but now they are no longer allies. Their once unbreakable loyalty has been eroded by the Jarl's lies and the fury of the accusation of treason. Haldor, for his part, knows that in order to survive, he will have to be faster, smarter, and, above all, more ruthless than ever. But his former companions are not the only ones who haunt his steps. Haldor's mind is flooded with memories of the battles they shared, the laughter around the campfire, and the silent oaths made between swords and shields. How could all that have been turned into ashes? They were not just warriors, but blood brothers, the same ones who trusted him with their lives in times of need. Now, Haldor sees them as relentless predators, their eyes drunk on a thirst for revenge that only time can feed. He knows that no matter how hard he tries to escape, his former companions are close by. The hunt has begun, and what were once friends are now shadows that surround him, each one more dangerous than the last. The confrontation with his former companions, however, will not be just physical. Haldor will have to face the words they once shared, the promises that were broken, and the weight of the pain that he himself carries. He knows that to survive, it will take more than physical strength. He will need to rebuild himself emotionally, relive the old times, seek the strength of his leadership, and confront what betrayal has done to his own feelings. When he finally comes face to face with his former battle brothers, it will not be a fight of swords only, but a fight of souls, where the fate of all will depend on Haldor's willpower. Will he be able to restore his honor, or will he be consumed by the fury of revenge? The thick morning fog mingles with the ghosts of the past that haunt Haldor. After days of exhausting escape, he finds himself in front of an abandoned village, a place that was once a haven of comfort and safety. Every empty street, every broken window, brings back memories of a life that seemed to have been left behind. This was the village where Haldor grew up, where he met those he would one day call brothers, and where his own destiny began to be shaped. There he had his first fight, his first oath of loyalty, and his first promises to his people. But now, everything has fallen apart, a reminder that the past is never completely forgotten, even if the scars try to say otherwise. And it is in this desolate landscape that Haldor finds something he did not expect, the hidden truth buried in the ruins of his own heart. As he searches through the wreckage, he finds an old letter, yellowed with time, a letter that, in another time, would have been a symbol of friendship and trust. The words, written by a former friend, reveal something Haldor never imagined, the true reason behind the accusation against him. It was a trap, carefully orchestrated by those he trusted most. The Jarl, the man he served with blind loyalty, was involved in an even deeper web of betrayal, with Haldor merely a sacrificial pawn to hide much darker secrets. What Haldor thought was the truth was, in reality, a lie designed to engineer his downfall. And as he realizes this, the pain of his betrayal becomes even more bitter, for he has been used not only by his Jarl, but by those who swore to be his allies. Now, the weight of the truth begins to weigh on Haldor. His journey is not just a quest for revenge, but a quest for justice, for answers. He finds himself at a crossroads, to follow the path of vengeance, consumed by anger and pain, or become a man he always believed himself to be, the one who seeks to restore lost honor. The revelation of his past is both a liberation and a condemnation, for Haldor now knows that his true enemy lies not only behind his sword, but in his own heart. He must fight against fear, doubt, and the desire for revenge, for as he faces the truth, he will realize that the real battle is not with his former comrades or the Jarl, but with the darkness that threatens to consume him. The bitter winds of Scandinavia are not the only enemy Haldor faces. The great shadow of the Jarl, who was once his leader, now looms over him like a menacing specter. Having escaped death and uncovered the truth behind his accusation, Haldor knows he can no longer hide in the icy forests. The ruthless and ambitious Jarl has already taken drastic measures. He has ordered an invasion of all the lands to the north in an attempt to crush any threat to his power. For Haldor, this means that war is no longer a distant possibility. She is already on his trail, and he has no choice but to face the man who once considered him loyal. With the knowledge of the invasion in his mind, Haldor prepares for what is perhaps the most important battle of his life. This is not just a physical fight, but a fight for everything he believed to be right. The Jarl has not only destroyed his honor, but has threatened the freedom of an entire region. Haldor is now more than a man marked by betrayal. He is the last bastion of resistance against a tyrannical regime. The fields where he fought alongside his brothers in arms are now the stage for a great war that could define the future of them all. Haldor does not allow himself the luxury of blind revenge, but he knows that the only way to stop the Jarl's advance is to confront him head-on. The moment of truth has arrived. As Haldor gathers an army of unlikely allies, former enemies, and those who still believe in his cause, the tension grows. The cold of Scandinavia is mixed with the heat of a fight for survival. Haldor, now more cunning and determined, will lead his small force in a war against a much larger and more powerful enemy. However, the greatest challenge of all is not to defeat the Jarl in combat, but to rescue what remains of his own soul. He knows that by placing himself on the front lines, facing his former leader, he is not only challenging the man who betrayed him, but also the future of his own humanity. The price of victory will be higher than he imagines. The battlefield stretches out before Haldor like a vision of desolation, a land where cold earth and hot blood mingle, and where sword will cut the air with the sound of truth spoken with each blow. The war against the Jarl reaches its climax, and there is no more room for retreat or doubt. Haldor, his eyes fixed on the horizon, sees the Jarl's troops advancing, a tide of determined men, driven by the promise of victory that would secure their supremacy. But he is no longer the weak and wounded man who once fled through the icy forests. Now, he is a leader forged by suffering and pain, and he is ready to finally confront the man who has destroyed everything he has known. As the battle rages, the sounds of clashing swords, the screams and howls of combatants echo across the plain. Haldor rushes forward with ferocity, his sword cutting through his enemies with precision that only a warrior's experience can teach. Every move is a reminder of what is at stake, not just his survival, but the justice he has long sought. At his side, his allies, men and women he never imagined would have the courage to fight alongside him, face the Jarl soldiers with renewed impetus, driven by the hope of freedom that had previously seemed impossible. The icy wind bites his skin, but it is Haldor's fury that warms his soul, for he knows this is his last chance to reckon with his destiny. But in the heart of the battle, Haldor realizes that the fight is not just against the Jarl soldiers, but against the darkness that has so long dominated his own mind. Once seeking only revenge, Haldor now understands that the real battle is against the part of himself that desires destruction. The man who was once driven by rage now fights for redemption. The Jarl, a looming shadow in the distance, now becomes the embodiment of everything Haldor despises most: betrayal, manipulation, lies. The final confrontation between the two is not just physical, but a struggle of values, where Haldor's sword is the only thing that can destroy the tyranny of his enemy. The battle is far from easy, but the price of victory has never been so clear to him: freedom, honor, and the restoration of his lost soul. After the battle, the land remains silent, but the echoes of the fight still reverberate in the hearts of the survivors. Haldor stands amid the wreckage of his own life, no longer a broken man, but someone who has found the meaning of true freedom. The death of the Jarl, inevitable and bloody, does not bring with it the satisfaction he imagined. Looking at the body of his former leader, he sees not only the downfall of a man who wronged him, but confirmation that revenge, though sweet, does not fill the void left by pain. Victory, though deserved, does not make him feel complete. Haldor finally understands that in seeking the destruction of his enemy, he has only perpetuated the cycle of hatred that imprisoned him. Revenge was a path of the damned, and he, like so many before him, allowed it to consume him. As he gazes into the distance, Haldor feels the weight of his legacy. What once seemed like a journey of pure hatred and vengeance now reveals itself to be a lesson in human nature and true courage. Revenge, he discovers, is a flame that burns only those who carry it. What he did not know when he began his journey, wounded and betrayed, was that the true enemy was not the Jarl or his former companions, but the fear of being nothing more than a man scarred by pain. Now, with the battle won and peace slowly restored, Haldor finds himself at a crossroads. The world around him changes, and he, a man who survived his own hell, must decide what to do with what is left of his life. But Haldor's legacy will not be remembered solely for his struggle and his victory. His true strength now comes from the example he sets for those who still walk the path of shadow. Once a broken man, a prisoner of his own rage, he now becomes a leader. His journey, a story of resilience, should be remembered not as a tale of revenge, but as a reminder that even the damned can find redemption. He leaves behind a legacy not of hatred, but of freedom won through inner strength. And so, as he walks away from the ruins of battle, a new path opens before him, a path where true victory will be found not in the death of his enemies, but in the rebuilding of his own spirit. With the weight of everything that has happened, Haldor finds himself faced with a choice that could define the rest of his life. After struggling with betrayal, revenge, and regret, he finally reaches a point where peace, though distant, seems within reach. But what is peace to a man like him? Haldor, long consumed by the need for revenge, now realizes that the true challenge lies not in defeating the last enemy, but in finding serenity in a heart that has been torn apart so many times. The final battle against the Jarl is not the only war he has fought. He has fought against his own inner demons, against a life marked by pain and loss, and now, with the battlefield behind him, he finds himself facing a new struggle, the fight for inner peace. Haldor's final choice does not lie on a battlefield, but in the depths of his soul. He must decide whether to follow the path of reconstruction or to lose himself in the ruins of what is past. Many, after living through so many wars and betrayals, are lost in the void of eternal revenge. But Haldor does not want that fate. He wants something more. The choice he makes now will be the last war he will ever fight. A battle against his own nature, the nature that made him seek revenge in the first place. He knows that peace will not be easy, that it will not be found in defeating an enemy, but in reconciliation with himself. To do so, he will need courage, more courage than he has had in any battle. As he surveys the field before him, Haldor reflects on what brought him here. He has seen so many fall, so many be lost, but somehow he has survived. The last choice he must make involves no longer swords or shields, but the ability to forgive himself, to give himself a chance to start over. He understands that life is not only about external battles, but also about internal battles, the ones that are often the hardest to win. When Haldor finally makes his choice, he will be deciding not only the fate of his own soul, but a legacy he will leave behind for those who follow him. Can he, the man who was betrayed, let go of all that had consumed him and start anew? This is the final battle, and the hardest of all. Having made a decision to confront his own demons and forgive himself, Haldor sets out on a new path. It is no longer a path of revenge, but a path of rebuilding, where he seeks to restore what was lost and, more importantly, redefine who he is. Scandinavia, with its vast forests and icy mountains, is no longer just a battlefield. Now, it is a land that offers opportunities for rebirth. Haldor knows that to truly find peace, he can no longer live trapped in the past. He must look to the future, and to do so, he must let go of the hatred that made him who he was. The process of redemption is not simple. Haldor knows this, and with each step he takes, he finds traces of the man he once was, a warrior marked by scars, both external and internal. The pain does not disappear immediately, but he begins to realize that true strength lies in accepting that pain and using it to grow. He, who once fed on anger and a desire for revenge, now feeds on hope and a desire to start over. He finds in small gestures, such as helping those who still suffer from the Jarl's tyranny or fighting against injustice, the true strength he so longed for. Redemption is not a straight line, but a winding path that requires patience and resilience. As Haldor continues his journey, he begins to realize that his story, marked by tragedy and revenge, can be used to teach others. He shares his experiences with those who, like him, live in the shadow of pain and loss. Haldor becomes a figure who not only fights for justice, but also for peace, a man who, through his own failures and triumphs, shows others that no matter what the past has taken from them, there is always a path to redemption. He finds purpose in helping others rise again, find their own strength, and free themselves from the chains that bind them. And so, the man who was once consumed by hatred and revenge becomes a symbol of hope, showing that even the damned can find a way back to the light. The Scandinavian winter no longer seems as cruel as it once was. Haldor, now calmer and more focused, feels the earth beneath his feet with a new understanding. The path of redemption he has been walking, with his internal hardships and victories, now puts him to one last test. He has the power to rebuild his life, to help others, and to finally leave his past of hatred and revenge behind. But at the same time, the shadows of his former self still haunt him. The man he was, the ruthless and merciless warrior, still exists within him, and the fight against that man is not completely won. He knows that as long as he lives, the darkness will never completely leave him. Haldor understands, perhaps for the first time, that the real battle is not just against others, but against the man he once was. As he prepares for what seems to be the last step on his journey, Haldor finds himself once again before the same village where it all began, the place where he swore vengeance, where the promises of blood and honor became a burden. Now the frozen land seems quieter, more distant. The abandoned village that once meant so much to him is now merely a symbol of all he has lost. But Haldor's arrival is no longer that of a lost and bitter man. He returns with a new mission, no longer to destroy what remains, but to rescue what can still be saved. However, the village is far from safe, as he has bitterly discovered in his past. Haldor's return provokes a wave of distrust. The inhabitants, those who still remain in the region, see in him not a savior, but a specter of the worst of their memories. He knows that to win the support of his own land, he will need to prove more than his intentions. He will need to show that he has truly changed, that he is no longer the man who was once consumed by rage. The ultimate lesson for Haldor, however, is not to win external battles, but to win the hearts of those who have seen him fall so low. He will have to prove himself worthy of the trust he has lost, and the only way to do that is through actions, not words. Meanwhile, as the icy Scandinavian wind blows, Haldor realizes that in order to complete his journey of redemption, he can no longer carry the weight of what brought him here. He finds himself face to face with the repercussions of his past choices, and must make a fundamental decision. The answer lies not in revenge, nor in more war. Haldor's true choice, the one that would define his ultimate destiny, is the ability to move forward without being consumed by what once was. The village is now quiet, once again enveloped in the blizzards that characterize the end of winter. Haldor, who once came to this place with eyes full of hatred and vengeance, walks with a different weight on his shoulders. It is no longer the burden of anger that drives him, but the weight of his choices and the need to rebuild what was destroyed. He stands before what remains of his old home, the fields that once bore witness to his youth, now scarred by time and war. But in his heart, he no longer feels the same flame that once consumed him. There is no longer a desire to destroy, only an urgency to reconcile with all that has been lost. The village, with its ruins and its suspicious inhabitants, watches Haldor's return with wary eyes. It is no longer loyalty that he seeks, but acceptance of his transformation. And as he speaks to those who remain, he realizes that true change begins within himself. The words he speaks are not about victories in battle, nor about the blood of his enemies, but about the internal struggle that he has finally managed to overcome. The rage that consumed his being has been replaced by calm acceptance, and revenge, which had been the driving force of his life for so long, no longer has any value. Haldor becomes no longer the man seeking justice, but the man who offers forgiveness for himself first and for all those around him. But the greatest challenge is yet to come. At the end of the war, when the Yar has fallen and the last sword has been driven into the earth, Haldor has a choice: to go alone where the wind will take him, or to remain and lead those who, like him, seek reconstruction. The decision is not easy, but Haldor understands that his true mission, his last fight, is more complex than any physical battle. He volunteers to be the leader his land needs, not with the force of arms, but with the strength of his journey. He knows that true leadership comes from understanding, from acknowledging one's flaws and weaknesses, and from the ability to guide others toward peace and reconstruction. In a final ceremony, with all eyes fixed on him, Haldor vows that the cycle of blood will not be repeated. With peace finally achieved, not through military victory but through internal victory, Haldor looks to the future. The man who once lost his way on the path of vengeance now finds himself on a path of healing and rebuilding. The legacy he leaves behind is not that of an unbeatable warrior, but of someone who knew how to face his own demons and emerge stronger. He is no longer the man who roamed the icy forests of Scandinavia, but the man who is now the beacon of hope for those who believe that even in the darkest hours, there is a chance for redemption. And so Haldor walks, no longer as a condemned man, but as a free man, free from his past, from the chains of hatred, and from his insatiable quest for revenge. He finds peace not in external victories, but in the balance of his own spirit. And in the end, he is remembered, not for his battles and victories, but for his ability to rebuild himself and bring peace where there was darkness. Did you like the story? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next epic sagas. The journey continues.